Hi, thank you for coming to this video at YouTube. My name is Ari Markenstein. Just a few details about myself. I live in Australia. I was born in 1938 in the Netherlands, Holland as they say, in the city of Rotterdam. Now what I'm going to tell you what happened there in the beginning of the Second World War will try and make some of us understand that the Holocaust really occurred and that Jewish people truly were massacred by the Nazis. As I said, I was born in Rotterdam in Holland in 1938, and we had an uncle living just near Rotterdam in a little city, a little village rather, called Ketel, just outside Rotterdam. And my uncle was a doctor. He had a beautiful house, double-story house, stone house, you know, natural stone. It was a large house, many bedrooms upstairs and rooms down below. And in 1940, when the Germans came into the Netherlands, very soon when they came into the Netherlands, two German officers came knocking on the front door of my uncle's house. Very politely they said, Dr. van der Kuy was his name, you will have to shift out of your house. You will have to vacate your house because we want possession of it. And he said, why? He said, because we want to have our local headquarters in your house. Your house is very suitable, being a large house. And he said to them, oh no, he said, you can't do that. And they said to him, why can't we do that? And he said, because if you do something against three important persons in this village, that's the doctor, it's the minister of the church and the mayor. If you do anything against these important people, then you will get the local population against you. And that is not very good. They said, ach so, you know, ach so, they said. They turned around and went away. They came back the next day. And they said, well, we've decided to do something else, he said. We've decided that you and your family, and you've got your business in this house, your surgery, you can remain in this house, but only on the bottom floor. The top floor, upstairs, we want 6 German officers there for accommodation. Oh, he said, and what about the food? Oh, they said, that's no worries. They said, keine Sorgen, no worries. Your housemaid will have to do the cooking for these 6 German officers, clean the rooms, etc., and we will provide the food. Every Friday a truck will come, you just tell the driver, this is what we need for the officers. Bag of spuds, sausages, whatever. It will be there every Friday. Well, what could he say? What could he say, rather? He couldn't say anything. This was a solution to the problem. At least he wasn't kicked out of his house. So yes, this is what happened. Very soon, 6 German officers arrived and they made their beds, accommodations upstairs, and the maid had to do the cooking. A lot of extra work for the family, yeah, right. But you know what happened? Very often those German officers were not there. They were yahooing, as we call it, somewhere in the nightclubs in Rotterdam, having a great time. Very often they didn't come and sleep. Very often they weren't there. But of course, they were still officially there. So the truck always came on Friday. Always. Very German-like, very punctual. And yeah, bag of spuds we need, and this and that, and this and that. And very often there was too much food in the house. My uncle started to give away food because it was wartime. Food was a problem at times, particularly in the last stages of the war. But this was in 1940. And they noticed that sometimes there was plenty of food there. However, in 1942, the Germans started to round up the Jewish people. And my uncle, being a doctor, he had Jewish patients, yeah. And he got very upset because these patients, these Jewish patients, were great friends of his. He looked after them. He had probably, some of them had been going to him for medical advice for years. He got very upset and he said to his wife, "What shall we do?" Well, they made an agreement. He jumped into his car. He had a Citroen car. I still remember it. I made a few trips with him in his car. And he jumped in his car, as I said, and he picked up his Jewish patients one by one. And he put them in the cellar. You know, back in Germany, Holland, France, etc., those countries, they very often, nice houses, good houses, have big cellars down below. I see the same thing in the United States. Big cellars, concrete floor, 6 feet high ceiling, you know, plenty of room for storage and all that. And he put those he put those Jewish people in the cellar. And they were eating the food of the Germans that was brought every Friday. There was plenty of food there. And as I said, very often the officers were not there. They were there, the Jewish people in the cellar, they were there approximately 3 years. And I seem to remember in my brain that there were 6 Jewish people in the cellar. You might say, well, Ari, you were born in 1938. You were still a little boy. Even at the end of the war, in 1945, you were only 7. How did you know? Surely this was a secret in the family that these Jewish people were in the cellar. Yeah, it was a secret, okay? Very much, you see. But, you know, in those days, Dutch people were very, very minded of their family. You know, whenever somebody had a birthday, the uncle and the aunties came. And they came to my birthday, and they came to my mum's birthday, the uncles and aunties, you see. And they had a cup of coffee, etc., etc., and then they had a little drink, yeah. A little snaps, as they call it in Holland. Bit of Jenever, advocaat, and they got happy, didn't they? Not that they got drunk, yeah, but they started telling stories. And out it came, "Do you remember?" And then the wartime stories came. We were sitting on the floor and listening to it. You know, what had happened during the war. I tell you, some of these people back in Holland, they can tell you some stories. And there came the story of this and that, and somebody uncle said, "Oh, do you remember Uncle Peter? He had blah, 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 blah." Yeah, I heard those stories many times as a little boy. And you know, you don't forget it. You don't forget it. Yeah, of course I came to Australia when I was about 36. After having been in New Zealand for 18 years, I left Holland when I was 18, came to New Zealand when I was 36 years old, and then we eventually came to Australia, and I met Jewish people. We had a minister in our church, in the Assemblies of God, and he was a Jewish guy, yeah. He had an Italian name, Of course, I got friendly with him because he was my minister. And I told him that I loved Israel, etc., etc. I loved the Jewish people, and he told me that he was born in England. He was born after the war. His mum and dad were able to leave Greece and went to England. But his uncles and his aunties, his cousins, etc., etc., they stayed behind. But his mum and dad went to England. So he was born after the war, so he doesn't know nothing about the war. But his mum and dad told him that all his cousins, his nieces, his uncle, his aunties, he didn't have any. They were all killed during the war. He told me this. And myself, I became friendly to a retired gynecologist. He also had an Italian name. And he told me his story. He was studying in Italy to be a doctor. As soon as he finished his degree, somewhere at the end of 1938 or the beginning of 1939, I can't tell you for sure, but his mum and dad said to him, Peter, they said to him, you finished your studies now, you're a qualified medical doctor, we've got a surprise for you. Oh, he said, that's nice. What kind of a surprise do you have for me? Well, they said, we have arranged for you to be a doctor on a passenger ship that goes to Australia. If you accept it, it's there for you. If you accept it, there'll be a nice trip for you to go to Australia. And then if you don't like to do that anymore, you can find yourself a job somewhere here in Italy, but go on this trip. Take it as a vacation trip. You're a medical doctor now, you're qualified. Go on this trip to Australia. He did. He did. No sooner came he to Australia, the war was declared. Of course, his mum and dad had a bit of a inclination that this kind of thing would happen, of course. That's why they had it arranged for him to go on this trip to Australia. And of course, when the war was declared, he didn't want to go back to Europe. He stayed in Australia and became a gynecologist. And he was head of our local hospital here in Australia. And he retired, and when he was about 82 years old, I came to have him as a friend. We were very close together. You see, what I'm telling you now is my own experience and what I know about the Holocaust, etc., etc. I thought this might be helpful for people to understand that the Holocaust definitely did occur. God bless you. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Thank you very much for listening to this video. God bless you.